Good morning, Satnam. I thought I was going to be wearing the best glasses in the house, but no, Kira behind the camera. You can't see her now. We'll have to show you a close-up. She has won best glasses of Rama Business School Accelerator, Pressure versus Time. She's created a lot of pressure for us because we feel that we now need to also get better glasses. And I think that for our team, this is part of what works. Welcome to the Rama Business School Accelerator Fall 2020. We're going to be working with something all day called Pressure versus Time, a success self-psychology accelerator. Just wanted to make sure we got to say that 10 times fast. And so today we're going to be looking from a bunch of different perspectives, which we always try to offer in all of our programs, how to kind of create the kaleidoscope of consciousness and offer many different avenues into these concepts so that they can become lived experiences, lived intentions, and lived projections for your goals, for the things that you're working on, for what we're going to be talking about this morning, your infinite consistency, which is another way to describe the God self or the Godhead or the God consciousness in you. That's what we're interested in. We're not interested in some kind of externalized idea of what your highest intelligence is, what your highest goal set is, what your highest prosperity is, but we're actually wanting to, through these technologies and through these practices and through Rama Business School and through now what will become a whole four-year program at Rama University, Rama Business School, and getting a degree in this type of yogic science in terms of using these technologies to accelerate your real lived experience of creative impact. And so we'll be looking at this in all sorts of different ways today. So this is something that I ask my team a lot, which is that do you have to ask yourself, because it's all about you and you, do you need more pressure or do you need more time? And there's not, sometimes it's a different answer for a different project or a different scenario or a different day or you have a different kind of energy amount, allotment of energy that day. So you're either low energy or you're high energy. So maybe the answer would be different. But ultimately, many of us have kind of an overarching answer to that, which is in order to get something done or complete a goal or kind of see something through, it's usually the same thing, always. You either need more time or more pressure. Now you can add to the stew a little bit. You can add a little bit more pressure, a little bit more time. You can create a very specific self-psychology of a cocktail in terms of what makes you kind of get to the end goal quicker or with more consistency or with more enjoyment. And all of those things are just as important. And we've been taught in this kind of age that we came from that some of that is more important, that getting to the goal is more important or getting to the goal in a certain way is more important. But ultimately, in this age of Aquarius, the self-experience and the self-fulfillment and then what you end up doing with that really is the game, because everything is changing in this time. And we're in the midst of massive aspects of this change, more than we even know because we're in the middle of it. So sometimes it's hard to get perspective. So we're going to spend the day together wherever you're in the world, your particular time zone. We now, because we have such an international community, we have a lot of all-nighters and parties and things on all sorts of different time zones. So to the Europeans and the Australians, thanks for doing an all-nighter with us. And so we're going to spend all day kind of looking at these different aspects of how to create a creative impact on planet Earth. And what does that mean in the kind of yogic science terms? It means that you literally etch your vibrational frequency of creative impact into the energy field of the planet Earth. And what's another way of saying that? You create a legacy. You create something that lives way beyond you. We talked about this in our accelerator. We talk about it all the time, but we talked about this in our accelerator in the spring, how to kind of put yourself in the point of reference of creating legacy frequency. And another way of saying that we'll explore today and into our fall semester of Rama Business School is how we deepen, first how we make that impact, and then how we deepen that impact and truly kind of create a groove into the magnetic field of the planet Earth and of the other kind of record-keeping aspects of the frequency, celestial frequencies. You could call that the Akashic records. So if you're new to this kind of lingo and this kind of technology, this is what you need to be thinking. And we're all looking around at what's happening on the planet Earth, and we know that we have to change. We know that we have to relate to our output and what we're doing, our careers, our relationships, our parenting, our finances, all of these kind of real-life pragmatic things. We know we need to relate to these things in a different way. In the yogic science, we have the technology and the know-how that has been experimented with over 7,000 years and beyond that, of how do we optimize the human system, all of the aspects of the very complex, sophisticated, and my God, just beautiful human mind and body. And this is where I believe faith meets science, because if you start to really study the physical anatomy, the mental anatomies, the emotional anatomies, the subtle anatomies of the human being, it's nothing short of revelatory. It's just so beautiful and so complex and so sophisticated, and we really have only scratched the surface of it. Many of you heard me use this particular metaphor, but it is very true, and certainly now, which is that you have a very complex kind of piece of machinery. We can call it a piece of IKEA furniture. And all you get with it, if you're lucky, but sometimes, you get the box and the thing's falling out the side, so you don't even get the thing, right? That always is me. I'm like, how does that happen every time I buy a piece of IKEA furniture? Finally, I just decided this might not be for me. This whole DIY thing, I don't know. You get kind of a piece of paper, there's a couple of arrows on it, you get a little wrench, and most of it is in Swedish. And that is the human incarnation. And so what we're interested in is using these technologies that the yogis, the sages, the rishis, and these advanced practitioners have lifetime after lifetime in many ways incarnated on planet Earth to do these experiments. And oftentimes the highest of the beings are reincarnating into a human body as a blessing to the human civilization, not because they need to or they particularly even want to. That's part of the sacrifice many of these masters make in order to bring these technologies and perfect them in the human experience on planet Earth. So we're all looking around and looking at how things need to change and how we need to change and what that's going to look like and what it's going to take. And many of the issues and the problems and the now the real kind of shuddering of a planet dealing with however your particular perspective kind of relays to the current events politically, geopolitically, environmentally, and obviously living through now this 6 months of a pandemic, or if you look at it in other ways, ultimately you have to make a narrative that makes sense to you, that gives you energy, and that allows you to navigate a more and more complex time on planet Earth. But that's your job, nobody else's job. And so we're interested now, as we look kind of into the looking glass of the future of planet Earth, how can we use all the skill sets we have available to us? And if you're sitting here watching this from wherever you're watching it around the world, or if you're in this room, you have to now understand and start to treat yourself in a way that you've done a lot of work to get to this moment. And the reason is because you now have access to very advanced technologies that will allow you to optimize this human system in ways that create not only a competitive advantage, if you want to use Piscean business terms, that whole kind of how do we create a competitive analysis, a competitive advantage. It's way beyond that, but we could use that term for it. But ultimately, those types of terms and thought processes and structures that are built around that, those are falling, and we're in the midst of that crumbling, which is part of why it's so, let's say, nerve-wracking. Many people are looking around, and because they don't have a strong nervous system and the capacity to control and command their own mind and breath and bodies, the nervous system can't handle some of the demands, or a lot of the demands, that are basically being placed on the human civilization now on planet Earth. So when we kind of look at our power and our creative impact as human beings, because ultimately the human incarnation is supposed to be, now you have free will, but it's supposed to be a creative experience. Most people, they experience it as very destructive, which is just the creative power being inverted. So it's just using the power in a different way. But if you've made it here on this morning, or whatever it is, and wherever you are around the world, you've gone through many, many hoops, we'll call it, and lifetimes. Even just to chant the mantra, the vibrational sequence that we're about to chant, you have traversed 8.4 million lifetimes to get to this moment, even if it's the first time you've ever used this particular code. And we could liken it to Michael Jordan's game that he played in the kind of March Madness while he was a freshman college basketball player. And when he came to start playing the basketball at college, he was at Chapel Hill, South Carolina, I think, or North Carolina. He was not the best player, and there's all these interviews in that documentary, which I highly recommend. I'm giving you that as some homework. That documentary series that's just out called The Last Dance. There's all these interviews with players that he played with as a freshman and beyond, but particularly when he first came in, that he wasn't the best player that they had ever seen. In fact, they were better than, this one guy says, I was better than Michael Jordan for 2 weeks. Because he came in and he had, it wasn't that he was the best, but he had the kind of creative mind and body-mind system that was focused in the right direction, and he had a very powerful creative impact as his intention, which is that he not only wanted to be the best basketball player that ever had lived up until then, but he also wanted to create an impact wherever he was. So whether he was playing for, be a kind of elevator in the team experience. And so he had, and his coach said something really interesting, which was that not only that he had kind of some raw talent, and not only that he had ambition, which is incredibly important. So he had some raw talent, he had a lot of raw talent, he had some ambition, but he also had the capacity to actually change. And that's what we're working on today, is the capacity to understand how to direct your energy field in a certain direction, create a certain creative impact, then create the consistency that's required to consistently deliver on that impact, and then have the kind of openness and the frequency to be able to get better, to do better than you did the day before. And so he had that kind of capacity. So then they're playing, in March Madness, and first couple games are good, and he's, definitely impressing people, and he, his body moved in ways that no basketball player had ever kind of maneuvered the ball and the hoops. So he was changing kind of the whole zeitgeist and collective consciousness through his creative impact. And obviously we know his legacy now, so the rest is history. But there was a game in which he, the last 30 seconds, they were playing on the outside. The team that they were playing had a very strong defense inside, and he was past the ball, and no one thought he was going to take the shot from that 3-point play. He was very far from the basket, but he knew that he was going to take the shot because he had a good coach, and he was very coachable, which is very important. Mentorship and having kind of the ability, not only may you be as there's that famous poem, may I have difficult and challenging and demanding mentors and teachers. May I be the highest caliber to be able to receive that kind of mentorship. But in order to even have a mentor like that, you have to have a certain kind of capacity. But then to actually take the mentorship and do something with it, these are the people who are the most successful people in the world. You talk to one person who is someone you want the thing that they have, and you ask them how they related to their mentor, and you'll hear the same story, which is that I had strong mentorship, and not only did I have an incredible mentor, but I took what they said and I actually changed. I used the mentorship to actually maneuver. So he had a good coach, that college coach. And so last 10 seconds, he gets the ball, he makes the winning shot, and it's such an eloquent shot, and it's such a beautiful shot, and it's the kind of shot that we now are very used to when we watch basketball. But at that point in the early 80s, that kind of basketball had never really been played before, because he was starting to map out the creative impact he was going to deliver on the planet Earth, which he has done very well. And so he makes that shot, and I say before the coach says, I say to my husband, and that is when he became Michael Jordan. And it cuts to the coach saying, he no longer was Mike. He became Michael Jordan in that moment when he made that shot, because all of a sudden he entered a whole new kind of relevancy, creative relevancy. And when you enter a certain kind of frequency of your creative relevancy, it means that you're actually giving something to the planet Earth. And that starts to deepen this etching of your impact, your creative impact on the planet. But so one of the ways that we're going to explore this today is through these yogic science technologies. And these technologies give you the capacity to maneuver change and create change in yourself, whatever you want to call yourself. But ultimately, what we're going to start to do today is create change in your frequency bodies. And we call it the arc body, the arc line. You're not going to hear anything about this at other business schools. This is a very sophisticated technology of how you create a shift in your ability to maneuver a highly complex arena on planet Earth. So what does that mean in pragmatic sense? If you're unemployed, if you're stuck at a job you don't love, if you're trying to figure out what you're going to do in a career transition in the midst of just shattering of industries, different industries around the world because of the current conditions and situations that we're living in. Everyone is looking around and going, I have to make a change. One way or another, I have to make a change. Well, I want to go into some of these very effective and magnetically powerful yogic science technologies to allow you to create what actually will create change and then maintain change in you. We'll call it you, but ultimately it's the projection of your frequency that creates the experience of you, both for you and for whoever you're in relay with. So whether that's somebody who's interviewing you for a new job, or whether that's something that you're trying to create and you're trying to get some help with, or whatever you are in the spectrum of all of the different challenges that we are facing, we want to give you the power to change. And the power to change in the yogic science is the power to maneuver the frequency body. Impact, make it more impactful, make it more bright, make it more electric, make it more magnetic, so that you can create these kind of changes that we now need. This is where the genius and the creativity and the ability to be agile comes in very, very, not just handy, but I think it's really necessary to be successful in these times. So we'll do some things to work with this morning. I'll interview an incredible entrepreneur maverick, and you can kind of receive the pattern of that. Then we're going to break out into some really amazing different classroom experiences with amazing maverick presenters, really working with the deconstructing all these different kind of obstacles and points of views so that you can start to think differently. And then we'll come back with Hari Jeevan this afternoon. He's going to kind of go into some of these success patterns and diagrams, which I'm really excited about. He drew me this diagram in Sikkim in India that I want him to share with you. So let's see if that can happen, about your creative power and your frequency ability to make actual kind of impact on the planet Earth. And then I'll be back this afternoon. We'll take some questions and answers about this stuff, and then we'll finish with another kind of level of the infinite consistency of your destiny. Okay, so that's our plan. Bring the palms together.